China's Straight Thunder 2025 exercises embody a significant projection of military power, not just to Taiwan, but to the international stage. This goes beyond the maneuvers themselves. Deploying YJ-21 air-launched ballistic missiles is a strategic decision. Hypersonic, with speeds reaching Mach 10 and almost impossible to intercept, these weapons are not just for show. It's a clear statement to Taiwan's allies, especially the United States, that Beijing is ready to enforce unification, if necessary.
Yeah, ready to enforce, but also test run their gear. Let's face it, Ivan, this so-called exercise feels more like Beijing practicing the invasion playbook. A full blockade drill, live fire exercises hammering on port or energy facilities. These maneuvers ain't subtle. They're testing a step-by-step strategy for crippling Taiwan and cutting off help from allies. Straight thunder? More like dry-run war games.
It does present all the hallmarks of coercive tactics. Look at their operational strategy, surrounding Taiwan on every front, ground, air, sea. This isn't random. This level of coordination aligns with Beijing's long-term ambition of total reunification. And beyond the tactical aspect, it's propaganda, Duke. Domestically, it fuels nationalistic fervor, showing a strong military unified under Xi Jinping's vision.
Propaganda, sure. But it's also sending a big fat message to D.C. that Chinese waters aren't open for freebies like they're used to. Look at their live fire stuff, right? Precision strikes on key civilian targets, ports, energy stations, all assets Taiwan would need if things really popped off. They're saying, look, we can starve this island out or roll over it day one. And those YJ-21s? It's basically saying, yeah, come on, U.S., try to interfere. Watch how fast we disable your fleet. You think the Pentagon's ignoring this? No way.
Yet this aggressiveness is a double-edged sword. While China flexes muscles militarily, the economic implications cannot be ignored. The Taiwan Strait accounts for nearly all significant global trade routes. Disruptions due to these exercises, even temporarily, shake stability. It's a gamble for Beijing. Escalation might achieve deterrence but could alienate essential trade partners if sanctions or loss of trust materialize.
It's a gamble, but Xi probably doesn't care much about alienation. Isolation, sanctions, they've been tightening that Belt and Road dependency net. Losing a few trade partners? Just parts breaking off a bigger machine. They'll triple down on self-reliance at home. In the meantime, they're building confidence with all this regional thunder. The Shandong Carrier Group doing rounds in the Strait, blocking key maritime corridors, showing they're the new local boss. Nobody muscles Taiwan. Xi's building that new order piece by piece, Ivan.
And in this so-called new order, Taiwan's sovereignty isn't the actual question, it's symbolism. Taiwan as the rogue province unsettles the very ideological foundation of Beijing's rule. If Taiwan remains independent and democratic, it poses an existential contradiction to China's one-party model. Their stakes aren't just territorial, it's about regime survival and control of the Pacific stage.
Yeah, and they're tightening that noose real quick. Those simulated precision strikes? This ain't just theater, Ivan. This is live-action prep, a real-world run sheet if things escalate tomorrow. And all of this build-up, Ivan, those drills, the military rollout, it's no wonder the G7's fired back with that statement. They're flat-out branding China as a global security risk, blocking trade routes, ramping up military chaos. This isn't about stability, it's about daring the world to react.
I've read the G7's concerns in detail, Duke. It's not merely the drills themselves, but the precedent they set. If the Taiwan Strait, through which nearly 50% of global trade transits, becomes a chessboard for military maneuvers, the economic reverberations could be catastrophic. Beijing's actions chip away at the very framework of international cooperation.
Catastrophic, sure. But you think this worries Beijing? They're playing the long game. And their propaganda? Oh, it's not just convincing the home crowd. It's laying groundwork internationally, too. Telling the narrative of legitimate drills against so-called separatists. It's a smokescreen, man. A bold one.
Indeed, their broadcast portraying President Lee Ching-te as a parasite poisoning Taiwan's future. It's calculated, Duke. Through such strategies, they attempt to frame themselves as the aggrieved party, justified in their actions before their domestic audience and even neutral observers globally. Yet this undermines their soft power in the long term.
Soft power? Forget soft power, Ivan. Beijing cares about the hard stuff, blockades, missile tests, and proxy maritime rules that bend to their will. And here's the kicker. Their warships didn't even nudge into Taiwan's buffer zone. They're careful about keeping plausible deniability, all while staying right on the edge of escalation.
True, but the international community is not blind, Duke. By conducting these exercises in contested waters, Beijing risks severe blowback. Sanctions, diplomatic isolation, economic divestments, they all loom large. And let's not forget that destabilizing the strait impacts every major economic player, including the EU. They have unequivocally condemned these as provocations.
Yeah, the EU's condemning it, sure, but that ain't stopping the PLA's Shandong carrier from circling Taiwan. And don't kid yourself, Ivan. Economic sanctions won't bite like they would have 20 years ago. China's fast-forwarded to insulate their economy. Belt and Road, they're locking in regional trade. They'll eat short-term losses just to keep checking the West.
Short-term, perhaps. However, stoking instability might push ASEAN nations and even neutral economies to diversify away from Chinese dependence. Their willingness to alienate key trade partners and risk long-term trust undermines global economic frameworks. In the end, isolating oneself is an unsustainable strategy for a global powerhouse.
Yeah, you tell Xi that if he's securing missiles aimed at anyone mixing into his strait, isolation or not, he's threading the needle between provocation and leverage. The drills are his power show, like a muscle flex before the chokehold. Step back or suffer. Man knows what he's doing.
It's precisely this brinkmanship I worry about, Duke. Balancing coercion and diplomacy requires finesse, but Beijing's escalating tactics push perceptions toward instability. Global reactions solidify Taiwan as a central issue rather than an isolated one. We're watching history turn on trade routes and missiles, a sobering trajectory.
All right, Ivan, so with all this brinkmanship unfolding in the Taiwan Strait, let's talk about how Taiwan is preparing to hold its ground. They've got their new batch of F-16Vs, some of the slickest fighters out there. These things are built for maritime combat, cutting-edge radar, precision-guided strike systems, you name it. Still, the question remains, are they enough? If China decides to pull the trigger and these drills turn real, can a handful of jets hold back an entire fleet?
A handful of jets, Duke. No, but it's not just about singular advances. Taiwan's strategy hinges on asymmetric warfare. Their navy, for instance, has introduced advanced missile corvettes, stealthy, agile. Combined with U.S. arms support and intelligence, Taiwan is shoring up its defense against a full-scale assault. Yet I must underscore, technology is not the panacea here. The political resolve of Taiwan's allies will be equally crucial.
Political resolve, huh? You mean like NATO putting its nose in the Indo-Pacific? It's tricky. NATO's usual playground is across the Atlantic, not the Strait of Taiwan. But maybe this escalation shifts the game. China flexes, and it ain't just Taiwan, or even Uncle Sam, reacting. You think this is pulling NATO closer into the mix?
Possibly. The Taiwan issue resonates beyond its borders. NATO's latest discussions hint at concerns over strategic ties with Pacific allies like Japan and South Korea. While it navigates its traditional European focus, the evolving scope of alliances may indeed create a coordinated front extending eastward. However, Duke, it is also a fraught calculation. Aligning too formally risks direct confrontation with Beijing.
Well, confrontation or not, Taiwan's defense minister ain't sitting on his hands. They've been tracking PLA ships like hawks, running aerial drills of their own. Hell, they even scrambled jets right into exercise zones. It's the kind of message you gotta send when you've got Beijing knocking at your coastline every other Tuesday.
Indeed, Duke. Yet the friction amplifies a troubling dichotomy within Taiwan itself. Public sentiment leans toward preserving peace. Calls for dialogue and coexistence are palpable despite governmental posturing. It reflects a society caught between existential threats and a universal yearning for stability.
Right, and that's the real battlefield here, hearts and minds. The Taiwanese people don't want another Korea or Ukraine. They want to keep their autonomy without turning the whole place into a war zone. But how do you square that with the leaders in Beijing, who see this island as their final puzzle piece?
That is the paradox, Duke. Taiwan embodies both the aspirations for democracy and the stark geopolitical gamble China is willing to undertake. Ultimately, this clash extends far beyond Taiwan. It questions the global balance of power, the sanctity of democratic ideals, and the endurance of established military alliances in a drastically shifting world order.
Heavy stuff, Ivan. Real heavy. But you're not wrong. Everything happening out there, peace, war, deterrence, it's not just about Taiwan. It's about setting the rules for the next century. Who calls the shots? What gets protected? And what gets steamrolled?
Precisely, Duke. And as we navigate these treacherous geopolitical waters, it is clear the stakes couldn't be higher. China's drills, Taiwan's defenses, and the broader international responses, they're all pieces of a larger narrative. One that speaks to the fragility of peace and the resilience required to uphold it.
So, to everyone listening, it ain't over, not by a long shot. But one thing's for sure, this fight, it's bigger than borders. Let's just hope we've got calmer heads steering the ship before the whole thing goes up in flames.
And on that note, Duke, we must conclude. Let's keep watching, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep hoping. The path to peace is arduous but not impossible. Thank you everyone for joining us. Until next time, take care.